Welcome to my channel. If you're someone who enjoys thought-provoking stories that inspire personal growth, you're in the right place. Today, I have a powerful story to share, one that might change the way you think about success, privilege, and the true value of hard work. Have you ever lived a life where everything came easy? No worries about money, no need to work hard, yet everything you wanted was within reach? It may sound like a dream, but sometimes, too much comfort can blind us to reality. This is the story of a young person who grew up in luxury, never worrying about money or work because their father took care of everything. They lived a carefree life, believing that wealth would always be there and that anything they desired could be obtained with just a simple request. But everything changed when their father decided to teach them an important lesson. One day, their father had a serious talk about the future, but they didn't take it seriously. The next day, he took them to parts of the city they had never seen before, areas where people worked tirelessly just to survive. For the first time, they saw the harsh reality of those who didn't have the same privileges. It was an eye-opening moment that made them realize not everyone had an easy life. But the lesson didn't stop there. The following day, their father told them they would start working, not in a luxurious office, but in a regular job checking paperwork. At first, they felt exhausted and frustrated, but over time, they began to understand the value of hard work. As days turned into weeks, they started to feel a change within themselves. They were no longer just someone who took life for granted, but someone who had a newfound sense of responsibility. Finally, after a long period of learning and working, their father handed them the key to an office, a symbol of trust and personal growth. The protagonist realized that life isn't just about enjoying privileges, it's about effort, dedication, and building something with your own hands. Most importantly, they had learned how to earn money through their own hard work. Join us as we explore this inspiring story and witness a transformation from a life of illusion to true maturity. Could this lesson change the way you see life? Let's find out together. Max, 25 years old, was born and raised in a family of immense wealth and power. His father was a billionaire, owning a global business empire, while his mother was a renowned fashion designer. From a young age, Max lived a life of pure luxury, pampered and cared for like a modern-day prince. He grew up in a grand mansion with dozens of servants at his beck and call. Every morning, his personal butler would gently wake him up. The automatic curtains would draw back to let the sunlight fill his palatial bedroom. A private chef had already prepared an extravagant breakfast, elegantly arranged on a long table covered in silk. With just a flick of his hand, a fresh glass of orange juice would be served, and his coffee was always brewed to perfection, just the way he liked it. He never had to choose his own clothes. His outfits, custom-tailored designer suits, polished leather shoes, and luxurious watches, were all laid out for him. As he descended the grand staircase, his chauffeur was already waiting beside the latest model of a luxury sports car, ready to take him wherever he desired. Every day for Max was an endless series of extravagant pleasures, attending lavish parties with high-profile celebrities, cruising on private yachts, and jetting off to exotic islands on his family's private plane. He never had to lift a finger, never worried about money, and never even considered working. To him, wealth was like air, always present, infinite, and never-ending. Max believed life would always be this way. He never once asked himself, where does all of this come from? Because, to him, everything simply appeared whenever he wanted it. The next day, I woke up with aching arms and a dull pain in my back. Working all day in the office yesterday had drained me more than I had expected. But at least it was a clean environment, with air conditioning and a comfortable chair. I thought my father would give me a day off to recover. But no. He walked into my room, looking at me with a stern expression. "Today, you'll be doing a different job," he said. I frowned. "What do you mean? I already worked yesterday." He pointed towards the door. "Yesterday was just the beginning. Today, you'll learn what real labor is." I didn't understand. But when I went downstairs, a truck was already waiting. Inside were several tall, muscular men dressed in work clothes. An older man, who seemed to be the foreman, looked me up and down before nodding. "This the kid?" he asked my father, then turned to me. "All right, kid. You'll be working with us today." Before I could react, they shoved a pair of rough work gloves into my hands. I looked at my father, hoping he would change his mind. But he just stood there with his arms crossed. "You need to learn how to truly work, Max," he said firmly. I had no choice. My first task was unloading cargo at a large warehouse. I had never lifted anything heavier than my phone. Yet here I was, carrying bulky, heavy sacks. After just 5 minutes, sweat was pouring down my face. 10 minutes in, my hands trembled, and my legs felt weak. The men around me worked tirelessly. They lifted, pushed, pulled, and moved goods with ease. Meanwhile, I was clumsy and awkward. I lost my grip and dropped a crate on the ground. People turned to look at me, but no one said anything. They just kept working, as if my mistake wasn't even worth acknowledging. I felt humiliated. But that wasn't the worst part. After a few hours, I was completely exhausted. My whole body was covered in dust, my shirt soaked with sweat and dirt. I had never felt so miserable. Just then, a man named Daniel, who seemed to be a seasoned worker, walked over. He was huge, his muscles thick and his hands calloused from years of labor. "Kid, you think this is hard?" he scoffed, effortlessly hoisting a heavy sack onto his shoulder. "We do this every day, from morning till night." I didn't know what to say. He continued. "You're used to having everything served to you, right? Used to snapping your fingers and getting whatever you want?" I froze. "Well, welcome to the real world," he said, then walked away. I stood there, feeling like I had just been slapped in the face. At that moment, I realized one thing: no one here cared who I was. No one cared that I was the son of a wealthy businessman. Here, I was just another weakling, someone who couldn't even take care of himself. And that was the moment I understood the real value of labor. After hours of grueling labor, my body ached in places I didn't even know existed. My hands were raw from gripping heavy sacks, and every breath felt like I was inhaling pure exhaustion. I slumped against a stack of crates, trying to catch my breath. That's when I noticed him. An older man, probably in his late 40s, was lifting a crate twice my size with surprising ease. His face was weathered, his clothes worn and patched, but his eyes had a warmth I couldn't explain. He caught me staring and chuckled. "Tired already, kid?" I exhaled sharply. "More than tired." He sat down beside me, stretching his arms. "First time doing real work?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, something like that." He didn't mock me like Daniel did. Instead, he just smiled. "It gets easier. Well, maybe not the work itself, but how you deal with it." I frowned. "How do you even do this every day?" It's exhausting. And for what? A few dollars? He let out a deep, hearty laugh. A few dollars, kid. To you, maybe. But to me, every dollar I earn is a step closer to making my son's life better. I turned to him, surprised. My name's Miguel, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. I've got a 10-year-old boy. Smart kid. Wants to be an engineer someday. I work 2 jobs, here at the warehouse during the day, and as a night janitor at a restaurant, just to keep him in school. I stared at him. 2 jobs, every day? Miguel nodded. Yep, no days off, no vacations. But you know what? I don't mind. I couldn't understand. Why, doesn't it suck? He shrugged. Maybe. But when I see my son smile, when I see him studying hard, dreaming big, it's all worth it. I fell silent. Miguel leaned back against the crates, looking up at the ceiling. You know, Max, some people think work is just about making money, but it's more than that. Work is about purpose, about taking care of the people you love, about proving to yourself that you can push through, even when things get tough. He turned to me, his gaze steady. One day, you'll understand. Work isn't just something you have to do. It's something that shapes who you are. I swallowed hard. For the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe, just maybe, work wasn't the enemy I thought it was. That night, I dragged myself home, utterly exhausted. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest. I had never felt so weak. But more than the physical fatigue, my mind was still stuck on Miguel's words. I had always believed that money could buy everything. But now, I started to wonder if there was something more important. When I stepped into the house, my father was already waiting in the living room. A glass of wine rested on the table, the soft glow of the lamp casting a shadow over his sharp features. I thought you'd quit, he said, his voice calm but observant. I dropped my backpack onto the floor and collapsed onto the couch. Almost did. He smirked, as if he had expected that. So, what did you learn today? I hesitated. I didn't want to admit that I was starting to understand something. But the images of Miguel, of the hard-working men around me, lingered in my mind. Why are you doing this? I asked. Why are you making me go through all this? He studied me for a long moment before setting down his glass and leaning back in his chair. Because you need to understand the value of hard work, he said. You need to know how difficult it is to earn every single dollar. I raised an eyebrow. What do you know about that? You've been rich my whole life. You've never had to worry about money. A faint smile crossed his lips, but it wasn't one of pride. It was quiet, almost distant, as if recalling something long buried. You think I was born rich? He asked softly. I blinked. Did you know that I once slept on the cold floor of an old mechanic shop, with nothing but a thin jacket for a blanket? I froze. What? He nodded. I grew up in a poor family. When I was your age, I had nothing but my 2 hands and a will that refused to accept failure. I worked every job I could, lifting crates, washing dishes, fixing machines, just to afford food and rent for a tiny room. But that didn't break me. I learned from the people around me. I worked tirelessly, and step by step, I built my life from nothing. I was speechless. Then, why didn't you ever tell me? I asked quietly. He looked at me, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. Because I didn't want you to go through what I did. I wanted you to have an easier life. But maybe I was wrong to let you grow up without understanding the value of what you have. I didn't know what to say. I had always seen my father as a successful man, a powerful billionaire, someone who had never struggled a day in his life. But now, I saw someone else, a young man who had fought his way through hardship, who had endured struggles no less than Miguel's. For the first time, I truly admired him, not for his wealth, but for who he had been and the journey he had taken to get here. I took a deep breath. Is that why you're making me do all this? My father nodded slowly. You'll never appreciate what you have if you've never known what it's like to have nothing. I swallowed hard. Maybe, for the first time in my life, I was beginning to understand my father. 3 weeks had passed since I started doing manual labor jobs. At first, I thought I wouldn't survive. But day by day, my body adapted. I was no longer clumsy. I learned how to lift properly, how to work as a team with the other workers. And most importantly, I learned perseverance. Still, I had no idea when this challenge would end. One morning, my father called me into his office. It's time for you to take on a more important task, he said, his gaze serious. I straightened my back, waiting. I'm giving you a challenge. In the next month, you must earn $5,000 on your own, without using your name or any help from our family. My eyes widened. $5,000? He nodded. You can do any legal job, but if you fail, you won't get the key. I clenched my fists. This was the final test. On the first day, I felt completely lost. I had no idea where to start. I had done warehouse work, washed dishes, but those jobs barely paid enough to get by, let alone help me earn that much money in a short time. After a whole day of thinking, I came up with an idea, a mobile car wash service. I bought some basic supplies and went around the neighborhood, knocking on doors to offer my service. At first, many people turned me down, but some gave me a chance. I worked tirelessly, using every trick I could learn online to clean cars quickly and efficiently. Within a week, I started getting repeat customers. They were satisfied with my work and recommended me to their friends. I raised my prices slightly but ensured top quality. 2 weeks later, I hired someone to help. Together, we could clean more cars in a day, and my earnings increased significantly. By the end of the month, I checked my total income, $5,200. I had done it. I placed the stack of cash on my father's desk. He looked at me, then slowly smiled. Well done, he said. Now you understand the real value of money. He opened a drawer and took out a small silver key. This key isn't just about owning a car, he said, placing it in my hand. It's a symbol of responsibility. Remember, you're no longer a kid who just spends his parents' money. You've proven that you can stand on your own feet. I clenched the key tightly, feeling a deep sense of pride. This wasn't just a reward. This was the beginning of a new person. That night, as I sat in my car, I reflected on everything I had been through. The exhaustion, the sweat, the failures, and the small victories along the way. Every moment had shaped me. I no longer saw work as a burden. I no longer saw money as something to take for granted. Most importantly, I no longer saw myself as just a privileged kid. The next morning, I made a decision. I walked into my father's office, holding the silver key tightly. I'm grateful for everything you've taught me, I said, but I don't want to stop here. My father leaned back in his chair, intrigued. Oh, what do you mean? I want to build something of my own. I want to start my own business, one that I create from the ground up. With my own hands. Just like you did. For a moment, he was silent. Then, a slow, proud smile spread across his face. Now that, he said, is the son I've been waiting for. Years passed. I started small, just like before, washing cars and offering services. But over time, my business grew. I learned everything I could: marketing, management, leadership. I failed. I got back up. I failed again. But I never stopped pushing forward. Eventually, I built something bigger than I had ever imagined. One day, I found myself standing in a grand office, my office, overlooking the city skyline. My father visited me that evening. He walked in, looking around with approval, then turned to me with a knowing smile. So, he said, how does it feel to be the boss now? I chuckled. A lot harder than I thought. He laughed. It always is. We stood in silence for a moment. Then he put a hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Max. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of those words. This wasn't just a journey about earning a car. It was a journey of growth, of resilience, of becoming someone worthy of respect, not because of my name, but because of my actions. And as I looked out over the city, I knew this was only the beginning.